And so in today's video, an injury on Chris Bumstead's bicep injury. Several people have pointed out that Chris Bumstead's bicep injury actually happened only a few days prior to the Mr. Olympia. And so whatever he saw weeks ago, it had nothing to do with this. And so what we saw, the redness, the swelling, the lack of ability to pose the bicep properly, that relates to a bicep injury that Chris Bumstead sustained only days prior to the Mr. Olympia. All you have to do is look at his arm. Look at it in his fully flexed state. Does that look as lean as you would expect for a guy with 4% body fat? Just take a look. Look at it. Does that look like a shredded arm? Or does it look more like an off-season arm? Chris had an MRI done. An MRI is a scan to see the soft tissue. An X-ray, you only see the bone. And so in the X-ray, it revealed a partially torn bicep on the medial side of the short head of the bicep. And so quick anatomy lesson. Biceps means there's two muscles. And so quite literally, you can poke a hole between your bicep. On the inside towards my armpit, down here, that is the short head. The long head, it's back up there. And so Chris, on the inside of the bicep towards the elbow, he partially tore his bicep. And so the good news is it's not completely torn. If that were the case, it would in fact need surgery. You can't magically heal a torn muscle without surgery. Why did Chris get injured? Was he lifting maximum weights, training too hard in the gym? No. And so although Chris likes to train with heavy weights, and we've seen him sustain a number of injuries, most recently in the quad training for this year's Olympia, previous Olympias, the hamstrings, shoulders, knees, the guy trains like an animal. But as he's getting older and smarter, he has to train safer and smarter than last time. And so how in fact did he get injured? After all the training was over. It was only a couple days out from the Olympia. And so how could it have happened? And so consider this. The last few days for the Olympia, what are bodybuilders doing all of the time? Posing. When you're preparing for the show, you no longer need to train in the gym. But you really need to hone in and keep posing. The difference between winning and losing a show comes down to how well can you pose. And so Chris would have been going through all the poses for probably an hour each and every day. And when you're posing, you're actually flexing as hard as you can. It's an isometric contraction. That is where there's no lengthening or shortening of the muscle. And so you're doing a front double bicep flexing for all you got. You can quite literally tear a bicep just doing a bicep pose. And so possibly doing a front double bicep, back double bicep, or side chest, you're flexing the bicep with 100% of your abilities. And consider this. The last week before the competition, what are all athletes preparing to do? They're preparing to dry out and peak for the stage. That means they're limiting their water intake and they're taking estrogen blockers. And so what typically would be done for a bodybuilder is rather than taking testosterone, they would stop. Testosterone converts to estrogen, and estrogen can make you hold water. And so in the days, weeks prior to the competition, you would dramatically reduce your intake of testosterone. With less estrogen, you're going to be even more dry. With more dryness comes an increased risk of injury. And so in the days and weeks prior to competition, it is imperative that you train extremely cautiously. It is so easy to get injured, as is the case with Chris Bumstead.
Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say